Sawadee-ka-pukon. Hi everyone. I'm Siu-hei Lai. You can call me Sam. I'm a PhD candidate at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Today I'm going to talk about my part of my PhD thesis, which for this presentation I entitled "Border Crossing and the Pursuits of Citizenships." Burmese Yunnanese young migrants in Thailand. This paper is part of my PhD thesis that studies the aspirations of Yunnanese youth in the Thai-Burmese borderland. So Yunnanese in Thai, usually the Thai referred as the Kongjin Yunnan. All right, and the data were collected in the intensive ethnographic fieldwork between July 2018 and August 2019. And most of my fieldwork was conducted in the, I will call it, which is the pseudonym of the village, I will call it Bampu Chatai, which is located in Amphe Mae in Chiang Rai. So you can see the yellow flag, so which is that's why I call it the Thai-Burmese borderland, because it is exactly located at the border between Thailand and Burma. So this village, which is sort of very different from any other Yunnanese village, because this village was established by a very famous, notorious drug warlord, Khun Sa. So, and the research is, the location is different from many of the research that studying the Yunnanese Chinese in northern Thailand, that most of the fieldwork are based in the Kuomintang Yunnanese villages in the northern Thailand. So, and despite the fall and exodus of Khun Sa, Bampu Chatai still retains some ungoverned features. Say, for example, the village has its own local governing hierarchies and the local political judicial practices. And in terms of everyday life as well, even for it is part of the territory of Thailand, but still the lifestyle, the customs are very different from any Thai villages. So, which means that the everyday life in the village and the social control of the village keep a certain distance to the Thai state. And the ungoverned features has attracted many undocumented immigrants from northern Burma. All right, undocumented immigrants, that means the migrants migrated into Thailand without any record or without any valid travel document or identity papers. So, and these undocumented migrants, most of them are Yunnanese from northern Burma, and as well as other sort of illegal immigrants. And the village, till nowadays, I would say, is still a safe harbor for the immigrants without any Thai identity papers or travel documents to live in. So, therefore, when I conducted my fieldwork back then, I met quite a number of undocumented Yunnanese youth, Yunnanese young people who were born and migrated from northern Burma. Most of them are from the northern Shan state. And so they crossed the border for pursuing aspirations. So, and they constructed Thailand as the space for fulfilling their aspirations. So here there are two of my interlocutors. So both of them are born and migrated from northern Shan state. So one of them is Agot. So he was born in Guikai, so it is a small town in between Lashio and the border to Yunnan, China. So Guikai is a town until now they still under under the threats of armed conflicts and ethnic insurgencies. So, and he moved to Thailand. So, in order to pursue to live in a more peaceful social milieu, and because his home was suffered a lot from the different sort of conflicts and political instabilities. So, and other young people I met in Bambu Chatai is Adi. So, he was born in Lashio, the municipal town of northern Shan State. And the reason for him to move to Thailand is that he wished to stay away from the very crappy lifestyle, because at the time he was in Lashio, he was addicted to playing online game, and he was tempted to engage in the juvenile crimes. So in order to stay away all these temptations, so he decided to just pack his baggage and find a way to move to Thailand and to receive education. So, and these two young men are the undocumented migrants I met in Bambu Chatai. But so many of them, they migrated as undocumented migrants. But why they need to migrate as undocumented migrants? So there are two reasons. One is they want very clear that they want to abode in Thailand for a considerable period of time. That is, they want to stay in Thailand on the basis of years. So they want to stay in Thailand for maybe 3 or 5 years and to start to do their education in Thailand. And in order to stay for such a long period of time, that means they need to avoid the state rather. That is, say, for example, if they overstay in Thailand, I mean, they must find a way to avoid being detected by the immigration officers. So therefore, they cannot adopt any usual border crossing methods or facilities. Say, for example, for many of the Burmese nationals living in the border, so they might cross the border with a piece of paper, sort of a day border pass, so they can cross the border to Thailand, to northern Thailand, and they can do their shopping. They can find doctors, so and so on, and they must return to Thailand, say, or their right of border crossing, usually within 14 days. So they must return to Burma after 14 days. But since they need to stay for a very long period of time, so they need to find the other ways to cross the border. So one of the way is they call the waterway. So at the Tachileik-Mae Sai border. So let me use one of my interlocutors' works to explain what they mean by waterway. So here are the works from Agwai. He is also another interlocutors I met in Bambu Chatai, and he explained that many of them they cross the border via the waterway at the border between Tachileik and Mae Sai. So and here he said When I got off the plane at Tachileik Airport, rather than headed to the checkpoint where people crossing border to Mae Sai normally, I went to an underground checkpoints, and it is just a jetty run by some smugglers. This is what most people call the waterway, meaning that crossing the border over the river with a sampan instead of using the bridge on foot. Paying $500 to the smugglers, and they will take you to another side of the river in a few minutes. So a lot of us use the waterway to get into Thailand, and did the same again when we went back home during term breaks. So this is one of the way how they cross the border from between Burma and Thailand through the smuggling services provided by the smugglers. And indeed, well, from the information I collect from these undocumented migrants, they said that the police on both sides, both the Thai police and the police in Burma, they all know about the existence of these smugglers, but they just keep a blind eye on this. One of the reasons perhaps might be is, according to my interlocutors, that the both Thai police and the police in the Tachileik, they are all fed by the bribes from these smugglers, because this is quite a very lucrative business, and so and quite a lot of some of the income, I mean the illegal incomes of these officers, they all collected from these businesses. So apart from the waterway, another way is they cross the border from the local informal checkpoints in the mountain in Mae Sai along the Thai-Burmese border. I mean, these checkpoints are devised for the local use. Say, for example, for the local living in the mountain, between the two sides of the border, they just cross the border to do some to buy the daily necessities and so on and so on. So, but these checkpoints in the uphill in the mountain, so usually the Burma side are controlled by the local ethnic militias. Say, for example, these pictures is one of the very common local informal checkpoint used by these undocumented young people. So this photo I took from the Thai side. So you can see the Thai signage here saying that people are not allowed to try to cross the border without any authorization. But on the other side, when we come down from this checkpoint, you can see this is the quote unquote the facility set up in the Burmese side, and indeed the checkpoint is under the control of the SSAS, the Shan State Army South, still an ethnic militias that yet to surround to the Burmese government. And this flag you can see is not the flag of the national flag of Burma, but it is the flag of Shan State. All right. So some of them they cross the border under these sort of the informal checkpoints, but without any paper or as a paperless subjects, their life in Thailand are subject to many obstacles. And identity paper indeed is closely connected to the pursuit of aspirations. So because according to John Topic, identity paper is the legitimate means of movement, and that means that which he means that the state, the only authority on issuing identity papers and travel documents to individuals, has the final say on people's access to certain spaces through the papers. So that means people all but render themselves to the state in order to obtain the documents for moving across space. So therefore, these undocumented Yunnanese teenagers must render themselves to the state and find a way to fit in that area. That means they must find a way to obtain identity papers. So there are several ways for them to obtain ID cards, but the process are of chaotic experiences and long awaiting. So the official ways include they can submit the application at the UMPO office or submit the application via the Thai public schools. Because these teenagers, when they arrive in Thailand, most of them, apart from enrolling to Chinese school, they were at the same time enrolled in the Thai public schools in the village. But these process through the official ways, the experiences about the prolonged awaitings. So one of my interlocutors, she waited for 13 years to get her first Thai ID card. But this is not the Bapatachon, that means the citizenship card, but just the card for the paperless hill tribe people, or the people in ethnic minorities or people in the hill, or some people they call it the Bat Si Chong Pu. And it is very common that when even they put in the application, they just receive no feedback from the local administrators. So quite a lot of them, they obtain their cards from the unauthorized ways, that is, from the identity paper brokers. They bought the cards from these brokers. And the reasons behind is that the one is because of the very limited viabilities. At this moment, what open for application remains the 10-year temporary residence cards, also known as the Hill Tribe ID card, or the Basi Chongpu. But these obstacles or these challenges or these hurdles when obtaining the cards is attributed by the very inconsistent and ambiguous identity paper policies, which has been researched by a lot of Ajahn in Thailand, say for example, Ajahn Mukdaman, Ajahn Pinggel, Ajahn P. And so there are many subcategories of the ID card, and which confuse the both local administrators and paperless populations. So let me wrap up my presentation. So my very inconclusive conclusion is that unlike identity paper, is the technology of inclusion that suggested by many governmentality scholars. I would say in the case of Yunnanese in northern Thailand, ID card is the technology of exclusions. While some of the scholars suggested, say for example, Ajahn Pinggel suggested these complicated, ambiguous, inconsistent identity document schemes, which creates a lot of flexibility that opens up the ground for the locals' interpretations that allows them to fit in more easily. But I would say this is not the case at all, based on my research, based on my findings. For example, those obtain their ID cards via the illegal ways are fall into another sort of self-surveillance. I will just conclude my presentation here with the works from my informants. So, I mean, she is another young people who obtained her ID card from these brokers, and she revealed to me when the time when she used her ID card in Chiang Rai. She said, "I always nervous what will happen if the police figured out my 10-year card is obtained through illegal means. You know, I bought my 10-year card from a broker rather than got it from the UMPO office. The card itself is real, but the process of getting the card is illegal. Will I get into any troubles? It is better for me to keep my card into a low profile. I'm not going to use it unless when necessary. So un, these undocumented subjects, they are fixed as the others and still being kept in limbo, even though there are a lot of so-called facilities for them to get their ID card in Thailand.